Good morning. It's Thursday, the 25th of July, and this is Govindraj Ethiraj, headquartered and broadcasting and streaming from Mumbai, but now in transit. A quick reminder, I'm traveling for a conference and thus will be intermittent or have short episodes for the next few days.
This is the Core Report with Govindraj Ethiraj.
And the take. The stock markets are clearly still digesting the union budget. The markets wrongly expected that capital gains on sale of shares would be untouched or even reduced. Yes, some were indeed thinking of that. You have to see the world through a political lens sometimes. If the markets had priced in steady taxes or even lower taxes, then this is not good news. And the markets are currently and quite evidently not sure how to react, except to focus on the fundamentals, which is of course not a bad thing. When sentiment and flows rather than fundamentals drive a good part of the markets and their behavior, then some of these issues become important. Now, if you look back a few weeks, ministers in the previous government and now who are in the present were exhorting investors to invest in the markets. The core report has been consistently pointing out that this is a wrong thing to do and politicians should stay away from trying to talk up the markets. Fast forward, and the top revenue official of the government of India said yesterday that only the rich majorly benefited from capital gains. Capital gains by no means is the preserve of the middle class. It's quite the opposite. The middle class is not the main earner of capital gains tax. It shows the rich piggybacking on the middle class, claiming that it is a middle class issue, the secretary said. Which also brings out some more nuanced questions. Who were the ministers thinking of when they were talking up the market? Short-term investors or long-term investors or investors in general? Now, I don't agree with what the finance secretary of the government of India was saying or is saying, but there is some merit in the government encouraging long-term investments and discouraging short-term investments. But then investors, many of whom are actually short-term or could be a combination of long-term and short-term, do not care for the nuances, particularly at a time like this when the stock markets are booming. And to that extent, this is not the best constituency to talk up or to engage in, particularly in this form. Having said that, which in a way brings us back to the bottom line, the markets have priced in everything for now. So moving on, there were several initiatives on jobs in the budget. Jobs, of course, is a massive problem and the solutions will be several over time and be the outcome of good policy and, of course, business leadership. The more fundamental question to me, of course, is the disconnect between aspirations and the availability of jobs or the kind of jobs people want. Private sector jobs are few and well-paying at the median, but do not offer long-term security. And the vast majority of job aspirants in India wants long-term security. And hence they line up for government jobs in the millions, even if government jobs pay less. So the private sector is largely the only driver for job expansion. Columnist Ajay Shah in Business Standard says that we must reshape state power in ways that create conditions for private persons to want to invest in India. This is the path to growth and has unlimited potential. He also argues it's better to solve these disabilities at the root through policy analysis and reform. When he talks about disabilities, he means all the problems that businesses encounter while doing business, including taxes or changing taxes. After which he says private entities, domestic or foreign, large or small, would re-evaluate the case for producing in India. So while we've embarked on addressing the jobs issue, many of the solutions will lie in the plumbing of how business is done, which is bottom up rather than top down. Overall, the budget has of course been hailed for its fiscal prudence, reduced deficit targets, and no big bang spending announcements, which could have been there. More on that in some fine print in coming days. And for some quick news for the day, the markets look for fresh direction. The stock markets are now clearly poised at a point where they will seek and search for fresh direction. Benchmark indices in the markets saw another volatile session on Wednesday as investors wondered what to do or how to interpret the budget 2024 proposals. The Sensex, which had fallen to a low of about 79,750, ended finally at 80,149 and it was down 280 points. The Nifty 50 hit an intraday low of 24,307 before settling at 24,414. That's down 66 points. Jobs, the bottom-up question. So the big question is jobs. How can we resolve this and to what extent? I try to pose this question as a bottom-up question from an entrepreneur or rather to an entrepreneur who has had his own shares of ups and downs. I spoke with Captain G R Gopinath, founder of Deccan Aviation and now Deccan Charters. Captain Gopinath, who actually calls himself a farmer now, is based out of Bangalore. I asked him to talk about the recent controversy where the government introduced, that is the state government of Karnataka, introduced a law to protect private sector jobs for locals. The move came in for considerable criticism and the government put it on hold. But the point remains, which is that the government is trying hard or was trying hard to respond to signals that it was getting from its electorate, which is to create or find jobs for its people. So I began by asking Captain Gopinath, what was the background in his understanding and why this was happening?
They're not bad in principle. There should be some reservations. It should be calibrated, as you rightly said, somewhere between, maybe the subjective opinion I'm giving, but I'm sure most people will agree. It should be somewhere between 30 to 40%. And it should be done with wide consultations. I think that is the key. With dialogue, debate, not only in the legislature, along with the opposition, they should talk to the opposition and other parties, but also with the economists, with non-partisan economists, especially of neither the left nor the right, of industry bodies, and also the labor. Consult everybody, because just thrusting it down the throat, somebody at his whim or his idiosyncrasy or ego, misguided politics, is exactly on the lines of what BJP did with the hijab controversy. It did with the rules of school uniforms. It did the same thing regarding Tipu Sultan controversy, textbooks. Overnight they changed the textbooks. This is knee-jerk religious communal chauvinism. This is regional Kannadiga jingoism, both misguided and misplaced. And I think it will do more harm to Kannadigas, because only if the industry survives, if there is industry, they can give any reservations. If industry collapses, and if the revenue of Bangalore, which provides 70%, crashes, he'll be holding the can. So he must act prudently. I think it was very imprudent to announce it from out of the blue. And it smacks of the same kind of misguided religious jingoism as what Congress is doing now.
Right. Okay. So let me come back to the calibrated reservation. So we are obviously saying now blue collar jobs up to a certain point. Now, is this something that industry would do either ways? I mean, in your understanding, being in Bangalore or Karnataka?
I think all of us, when Deccan I was running, and even now the Deccan Helicopters, which is a small boutique company which I am involved, we had bases all over India, and we always took local people because we wanted the local people join just out of a community sense of loyalty to that place. And also they are from the local areas. It's a good thing to do that, and we all do that, even in Bangalore. But there are some jobs the Kannadigas reluctant, just like in America, the locals are reluctant to do certain jobs, which is good, because then it allows the free movement of goods and labor is the bedrock of any vibrant economy, because labor moves where there's demand. That will obviously increase fair wages for the local people, and they move up the value chain. So in our own company, for example, the security guards, not just in companies, the security guards in apartments, security guards throughout Bangalore, they're all either Gurkhas from Nepal, not even within India. I'm not talking of foreigners. This is restricting movements of people within India, which is absolutely regressive and divisive. And also, large, vibrant economies have a melting pot of migrants, which is the parameter of a good economy. And it also integrates people. So there are some people, Kannadigas, do not want to, for example, they don't want to go to Bihar, but Biharis come to not only in Bangalore, they are there even in Bangalore, not only in five-star companies or technology jets, they are also in Udupi hotels these days. They are in agriculture labor, and which is good. And the Kannadigas are also very entrepreneurial. I'm not just talking of Narayan Murthy. That is a deeply entrepreneurial state. You can look at it when looking at all the Udupi hotels, looking at all the bars and restaurants, and the multifarious shops of every kind across the state, not just in Bangalore.
Right. I think, a recent article that you wrote, you made the point, which is well taken, that organized sector jobs are, of course, quite few, and they're barely 10% of the economy, and the balance is really the unorganized sector.
Not even 10%. The total number of people employed in the public sector including railways and the police and both state and central government put together, and the corporate jobs is about 55-60 million in a population of 1.4 billion. They are just about 6%. The rest are 400 are agriculture and agricultural labor, and another 400 are in small and tiny businesses. And the government will do well to focus on education, healthcare, which are interlinked, like Amartya Sen said, because they go hand in hand, and ensure that they give skill development, and most of all, reduce damn corruption, because Karnataka has been racked by corruption. The previous government, there was a charge of 40%. The present government, there's a charge of 40%. The investigations are going on. So everybody knows that, corruption is eating into the vitals of India, and also in Karnataka especially. I just give an example that, for example, to start a Udupi hotel, the government fee is well thought out. It is 3,000 rupees. Now it is 1,000 rupees to get a municipality license. So the government gets 1,000, 3,000 rupees, but the bribe is 30,000 to 1 lakh rupees.
Let me pick up 2 points, Captain. So one is that, let's say Karnataka or Bangalore specifically, thanks to IT and so on, has seen a roughly 2.5 decade of continuous prosperity, or at least linear prosperity. The second is that, blue collar versus white collar jobs. The aspirations are for white collar jobs. And even within blue collar jobs, the locals are getting edged out because, as you said, people are coming from Bihar or UP or Karnataka or neighboring states like Andhra, Maharashtra and so on. So it doesn't matter where they come from, but they're coming from outside. Now, there are two things that emerge from this. One is that people are aspiring for something higher, but they're not getting it for sure. Second is that even in blue-collar jobs, they're getting edged out because the immigrant who's coming from outside is more hungry, maybe willing to work for less, does not have a family to go back to, can work night shifts, and so on. So in both ways, they're getting edged out. And the white collar, for rightful reasons, I mean, you obviously, like, for example, tomorrow, you cannot hire a pilot on, let's say, in some form of reservation. I mean, it has to be someone who meets the meritorious requirements of that job. So how does one then manage this demand supply?
I do not agree with the analysis. Firstly, the blue collar jobs. There are many jobs which are filled by the locals. Obviously, when the locals do not want to go for an SZ, they don't prefer to be a security guard, right? But the SMEs are ready to be security guards. And many of them do not like to work as cooks in apartments, right? And there's a huge demand for cooks and security guards and all these beauty parlors in there. So the local population is not keen on getting into, spas and giving massages or beauty parlors. They are filled by the Northeast. So different parts of India fulfill that need, and it fits well. And 30-40% is, I think, even otherwise about 20-25% in companies like Infosys that take locals. Even in Deccan, we have a lot of locals. But obviously, in the management and top management jobs, for example, in the accounting sector, is largely Tamilians who are there, right? Just like in the journalism, it's largely Keralites and Bengalis, right? It's crawling with them. So now if you force and saying you take locals, that may not be the right way of doing things. As well as the white collar jobs are concerned, the huge number of people from not only just Bangalore, every district headquarters has got multiple engineering colleges. Hassan, for example, has got 3 engineering colleges, right? So there was only one long ago. Now there are 3 engineering colleges, 2 medical colleges, 2 dental colleges. So now all these people, even today, Infosys said they're going to hire about 25,000. TCS hires about 50,000 people a quarter. So now where are they going to get it from? This was done by ICICI Kamath long ago, where he started recruiting people from regional towns. In the regional town, people like Hassan, Tumkur, Kolhapur or whatever, they are much more focused because they're less distracted, more hungry because they come from rural background. They're very aspirational now. And from every village, you will have someone who's working in IBM or Accenture. In my own farm, at least in the village, my neighbor's children are all in Infosys and Accenture. And he resided in Infosys and joined, Google. So this is already an aspirational economy, not only in India, all over India, but more so in Bangalore and Karnataka and southern states like Tamil Nadu. So top-level management jobs and the mid-level management jobs must be totally on merit. It cannot be on, as you said, for either for pilots or for any other job. And sufficient numbers are being fed by Karnataka because Karnataka has the largest number of engineering institutions, technological institute of Indian Institute of Science, Indian Institute of Information Technology, and MBAs. So there is a flood of them. And they're all getting good jobs. And the problem is there is huge joblessness. Joblessness of both the, educated people without skills. PS guy who was just done a BCom, for example, or educated people with a POC without any skills. It's impossible for them to get or just a BSc. It's impossible for them to get a job. So they had to get skill development. If he has to be an English teacher, because there is huge demand for English teachers, they had to get a, what they call the education degree apart from the degree in literature. So the government must focus on good education and continuous skill development and healthcare and remove corruption so that thousands and thousands of small and medium enterprises, rise to the top. Now, the small and medium enterprises are not the focus of either central government or even the state government. The companies like Infosys, IBM, they are extraordinarily good for this economy because they produce 70% of Karnataka's economy. But the thing is, ultimately, you need bakers, you need hoteliers, you need welders, you need mechanics. They are the people who are the backbone of the engine of the economy. And that engine is filled up in the shadow economy by the migrants. They are in every aspect of our lives, both in the rural areas and the center. So the government must do what it's supposed to do, good governance, which is lacking, and corruption, removing of corruption. That has to be done in a systemic manner. So I think if they focus on that, jobs will get created and remove all the hurdles for startups.
So let me take a slightly political angle on this, not political to specific to Karnataka, but in general. If we look at recent elections, and I'm sure this could have been applied in the past as well, but recent elections for sure, one of the signals that's clearly being transmitted by voters seems to be their concerns on jobs or joblessness. Now, the politicians' response, as in the case of Karnataka, may be ill-conceived, including the fact that they've not taken anyone into confidence before doing this and rolling it out efficiently if they have to. But the fact that they're responding to a problem, to at least as I see it, seems to be quite accurate. As in, they are responding to what they see as a problem. I mean, we can blame politicians for a lot of things, but usually they get the signals right. How they react is, of course, a different issue, and we've talked about that already. So if they're reacting to something that is happening on ground, which is that there is joblessness, there is aspiration, even if people have jobs, they're not the kind of jobs they aspire to, then how does, let's say, the polity and the economy move forward, or what's really ahead?
No, you're spot on. The Karnataka government, the Congress here especially, and fortunately Rahul Gandhi left it to the local leadership. And the local leadership, sensed that there's a huge problem of corruption and there's a huge problem of joblessness, right? So they gave some guarantees, like, for example, giving free bus ride to the women. And of course, the freebies, they competed with BJP. They gave 5 kgs, they said 10 kgs, and they gave 2,000 rupees for every person. Some of it is good, but subsidy is good up to a point. Ultimately, if you see it, whether in Delhi or in Bangalore, if a car stops at the light, people are not begging. Maybe there's one beggar, but hundreds of them come to sell something that people want to sell. So this country is deeply entrepreneurial across India. And so they had to create the ecosystem for jobs to be created, not just top down, crosses down the line, and improve on tourism, for example, which is the largest employer in the unorganized sector, all the small scale industries. So if you now completely wreck the economy of Bangalore by saying that give it to the local people, then the industry will take flight. Already in lightning speed, not only the industry leaders condemned it, the neighboring states of Kerala, which used to be a communist country where there's no industry, and Hyderabad, they immediately put out a press statement saying that come to Hyderabad. They thought it's good brownie points to score, but I think it was a ill-advised move, and they should have consulted and taken a measured decision. I'm not saying take what I'm saying. They should have had wide discussions and not push it through exactly like what BJP did. What are the criticisms they made about BJP? They're still making on the demonetization or COVID lockdown or any of these things. They should have had wide consultations and have a measured decision taken so that they can implement it.
So, assuming that the politicians in whichever state or even center to that extent are responding to a signal that they've been given as recently as in the general elections, other state elections, and of course, they can see the numbers, whether they actually believe the numbers that are put out publicly or they have their own numbers to look at. I think there is general consensus that there is a problem on joblessness and job aspirations for jobs. What should they be doing or could they be doing? I mean, if you were, for example, let's say industries minister plus labor minister in the government of Karnataka, what would you do today as a politician rather than as, let's say, an economic commentator or as an entrepreneur?
But at least on the day-to-day functioning for small businesses, day-to-day business, the government can do a lot in focusing on that and governance and removing many, many obstacles. Because small businesses, as I said in my article also, 80% of the jobs are created not only in India, but even in developed economies, is created by tiny, small, medium enterprises. The roadside vendors, the pani puri wala, vegetable vendors, mechanics. These are the kind who are the 80% of the jobs. So we have to focus on that. While, of course, not killing the golden goose like IBM or Infosys or Toyota.
Okay, so if you were, let's say, an active politician today, entrusted with the task of addressing joblessness in response to an election season that we've just sort of seen go past, or rather we've just gone past, what would be your one or two key immediate responses and then medium to long term, or one each?
Immediate response in all the sectors is to ensure that you do not create cartels of big businesses. We need private sector, but we need a vibrant private sector with multiple thousands of competitors, whether it is in the higher level or in the middle level. We cannot have selective policies and selective promotion of individual business houses, regardless of how close we are, regardless of how everybody has helped. One important thing is that to really go through all the rules and regulations and keeping, of course, safety and all those kind of things in mind. Eliminate the labyrinthine of rules and regulations, because that's what creates bravery.
That's the first part, which is more to do with corruption and removing corruption as a source of friction. So it's a valid point.
Completely get the government out of the hand of interfering in the academics. Neither the left nor the right should get into interfering with education. They must make it totally autonomous, make all the Indian Institute of Management, Indian Institute of IIT, the higher education, and all the school board, make it completely independent of the government and the government bureaucracy, give them total freedom, put respect to people, and focus on education, especially in the primary and school education, and good healthcare. I think this is also repeatedly emphasized by Amartya Sen and John Dries, that these two will create jobs and eliminate poverty, but that's in the long term.
Right. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your thoughts. And it was a pleasure to speak to you again after a while.
Thanks, Govind.
That was the Core Report with me, Govindraj Ethiraj. Do stay connected with more of our coverage at the Core. You can check out our website or sign up to our newsletter for our exclusive stories, one in-depth feature a day on www.thecore.in. Do also track us on LinkedIn, where we usually post synopses or extracts of our top stories and interviews. We would love your feedback on how we can make business more interesting and relevant, including, of course, India's vibrant manufacturing sector. So write to us at feedback@thecore.in, and thank you once again for listening.